Hashtag underrated. Bruh. How's your back feel from all that padding? Oh my gosh. Does this other guy have this? I've just now realized this. Ah, you do! You do! Anu does it! Alright. Alright. Come on, man. Paid promotion. Includes paid promotion. Alright. Holy cow. Underrated. You're all fixed up to be like a middle-aged mama, you know? Why don't you put it in like a little sign and put it in your bedroom? Underrated. Holy cow. Holy cow. Am I wrong? All right. I already liked it. You see that? See how much of a nice guy I am? All right. Let's do this.
This video is sponsored by iostocks.com.
Okay, we're gonna do this because I cannot stand to hear an extra 60 seconds of British accents.
This video is sponsored by iostocks.com. After professionally coaching for Overwatch League organizations like the Boston Uprising or New York Excelsior, iostocks is now running the largest private coaching service available for Overwatch. With up to 350 sessions sold each month, he coaches hundreds of clients on a regular basis. His most successful client managed to climb all the way from silver into high
350 sessions every month? I mean, up to, obviously, but like, yo. Really? 10 a day?
top 500 in less than a year after only a few sessions.
No way.
If you
really?
want to improve as quickly and efficiently as possible,
Crazy.
check out iostocks.com and use discount code Major Midget for 30% off your first order. Widow's primary weapon, Chips' Demon, makes Widowmaker fire scoped distance shots, dealing 100 or 300 damage with a fully charged shot to the body or to the head respectively, taking a slither under a second to fully charge. Widow can also switch to SMG, dealing up to 130 DPS. For reference, Sombra's DPS is 160 and Soldier 76's DPS is 171.
Wait.
Yes. For reference, Sombra a second to fully charge. Widow can also switch to an SMG, dealing up to 130 DPS. For reference, Sombra's DPS is 160 and Soldier 76's DPS is 171. Starting off with a tad bit of micro. These are the percentage breakpoints to one-shot a variety of squishy heroes. However, due to factors such as trigger discipline and tracking, it's unlikely that you will min-max your percentage charge, but it's definitely worth mentioning to save a few milliseconds in sniper duels. Moving on to Widow's SMG. It's essentially what Fan the Hammer is to McCree, and only primarily used in close quarter combat, as Jane explains here.
Staying scoped in, yes, it will allow you to get the headshot in those regards, but is the headshot actually required to kill them? No. So it's much more important to actually prioritize your own survivability and enter into evasive movement, basically. AD spam, looking left, right during reloads and whatnot, but just like spraying them or whatnot, it will do less damage, assuming that you would have otherwise hit the scoped shot. But since you have teammates' assistance anyway, if you are standing still, it makes it much easier for a McCree to like burst you with 170. Instantaneous damage by just shooting you in the head and punching you if you're hard scoped in. So that's why in like close quarters, it's not that GM and pro Widowmakers can't hit those shots. It's that the risk of them getting shot and bursted through heals, through supports and whatnot is too big of a risk to take. True. So close quarters, store your ego and just SMG them to death and then debag them.
A fundamental.
True. Which is why you'll see Widowmakers in higher ranks when they go for those tracer shots. It's a lot of the times it's in situations where they're not going to be able to get peel in time before they die. So they have to go for the all in because they know that they're not going to be able to get support. Because again, the idea is that like if I could just unscope and survive, then I'll be fine. But if you can't, if you're going to unscope and not going to survive, you're not going to be able to beat a tracer SMGing. Like it's just almost never going to happen. So you have to go for that all-in shot.
Concept to Widow's rifle is to maintain longer sightlines. A visual example of this would be on Chunkertown first point defense, when you keep at a range.
Thank you for including this, because I know as stupid as this sounds, you'd be like, the fact that people don't even think about this with their positioning really tilts me.
Where flanker damage is not meaningful or easily avoided, or where hit scan damage starts to enter in heavy fall-off ranges. To add a bit more nuance to this, you also ideally don't want to be playing in enclosed areas, specifically against flanking heroes that want to play significantly shorter sightlines. For instance, on Havana first defense, even if you go left side of the sightline, it's very easy for Reaper or McCree to force a duel as the area is relatively tight and confined. Instead, playing the opposite side might make it harder for Reaper to path and for McCree to find a shorter sightline. Building off of this further, you always want to be constantly repositioning yourself and almost never peeking the same angle twice in the same period of time in sniper duels, as Spilo explains here.
Widowmaker just popped sights somewhere in this general vicinity here. What I would actually do is, instead of playing here, because she can easily shoot you from, you know, here, or here, or here, or here, right? This is no good. What I want you to do is I want you to actually move this way and you could actually take an angle going this direction, some positioning over here. The problem with staying here is she can shoot you from a million different spots.
Some key exceptions to mention that would allow you to re-peek would be
Yeah,
any
really
advantages gained after your first peek. This could be as simple as Infrasight or as coordinated as a dive, which will occupy their Widowmaker. Speaking about timing your peeks as Widowmaker, here's, coincidentally, IOSnox explaining why you don't want to peek too early.
Why do you peek this early?
I think I maybe thought that I could get a pick.
Even if you get a pick, can you just run on the point? You need to wait for your teammates anyways. So there's two reasons why peeking here is bad. First of all, even if you get the pick, no one is there to follow up. Your team is still in spawn. Your diva literally just died. Reason number two, there's no one applying pressure on the enemy team, right? So as I mentioned earlier, you always want to look for advantageous fights. The enemy Widowmaker, right? She can't spend all of her time looking for you. Once your teammates engage, she has to shoot your teammates. If she just keeps searching for you, then she's useless. When your teammates go in, they're going to draw attention of the enemy Widowmaker, and that's when you can peek. Right here, and do you see where the enemy Widowmaker is looking? So this is much better, because now she's distracted. Now she needs to decide what she wants to do. Is she going to deal with you? Is she going to focus your teammates, etc.?
To build off of that further, the same applies if you peek too late, and this is often why you'll see Widowmakers catch one or two teammates after the fight has happened, which would have been much more useful during the team fight when tanks can actually follow up. Building off what IOSnox briefly mentioned in that clip of wanting to take unfair duels, here he is again presenting and explaining a visual example of a Widow duel with more variables to account for.
You never want to take a fair fight, right? You always want to have an advantage when you go for a 1v1. For example, you get the jump on someone, right? You get the first shot without them noticing you. The advantage could be positional. So for example, if you have high ground, that's a positional advantage. You have your ultimate, that's an advantage. You can have someone pocketing you, that's an advantage, right? There's also peeker's advantage, because obviously you know when you peek, but the enemy doesn't know when you peek, which means that you're gonna have an advantage in terms of reaction time. So if we look at this 1v1, there's two outcomes. Either you use your ultimate here.
There's another advantage as well. Chat, do you know what the other advantage is in a duel? What's the other advantage in a duel? Probably the one that's most applicable consistently. It's actually the biggest advantage in the duel. Not the biggest advantage, that's not true at all. It's the most consistent advantage that's always available. What is it, chat? Time, like, no, because that, I mean, that is something important, but that's something that both Widows like benefit from, is team engagement. Nope, not him. Not blocking the winner. No, it's changing your sightline or changing your angle. Because if I know this Widow's here and I peek and I shoot and she shoots at me, if I re-peek that angle there, then I'm screwed. Well, what I should do is I should walk to my left or to my right and then grapple up. Go for a grapple shot. Because her crosshair is here and I know where she is. And so all of a sudden I grapple up here and she's like, oh shoot, I got to reposition my crosshair. Meanwhile, I'm grappling pre-aimed where I know she is. It's positional adjustment or peak adjustment. That's the biggest advantage. Information advantage. Knowing where she is and then changing your positioning to make her guess. Like you could go, okay, I know she's here, so I'm going to grapple all the way underneath the Nomadi attack, past the Mega, and peek out from the little window there. That's a massive advantage in the duel. The element of surprise is the advantage, right? And that is the most consistent one, which is why crouch peeking and things like that are important, because you can even do things like I peek a corner, shoot, I miss. I crouch and then I peek crouched, because that forces the Widow to change her crosshair placement to shoot me, where I'm already pre-aimed on where her head is. You kind of see what I'm saying? So even just a crouch, or I peek on this side of the wall and then I peek on this side of the wall, right? You start to play these mind games, right? That's the most consistent available advantage in a Widow duel.
And the enemy Widowmaker doesn't hide, in which case you can peek her and kill her, because you have a very, very big advantage. You have peeker's advantage. You have
Midget, I already kind of said that in the clip that you included of me, like peeking from different angles. So I'm not nitpicking your guide, I'm just talking.
An advantage, and you have wall hack advantage. Or she doesn't peek you, which means that for the entire duration of your ultimate, the enemy Widowmaker and the enemy Ashe are going to be completely useless.
Since Widow's weapon is heavily intertwined with positional matchups, I'll include more visual examples in the latter sections of my guide. Ending off with a bit of mechanical micro, here's Spilo showcasing some fundamental crosshair placement.
You're putting the crosshair off of where you need it to be. I'm not sure why. Not only is it it's like I can understand the height maybe, because you're still going to headshot her from this height. Why is it off to the side? Why is it not directly on the corner? I mean, your crosshair placement, it wasn't even a flick there. You just put your crosshair off of the position where it needed to be. You had all the time in the world to line up your shot, and you still missed.
This is even more important on console where you can't flick as easily, hence setting up your crosshair before taking the shot can lift a heavy load off your aiming. In terms of improving your aim, I recommend Triad FFA since it has good generalizability to actual in-game experiences, and on console, aim trainers just aren't a thing. Widow's first ability, Batman's stolen grappling hook, makes Widow launch a grappling hook towards the location she's aiming at from a maximum range of 20 meters away with a cooldown of 12 seconds. A bit of micro to start off with is to ensure your grapple sensitivity is low to prevent you accidentally grappling things that are miles off to where you place your crosshair. If you're uncomfortable on Widow though, I recommend gradually decreasing it over time. There are two primary uses of Widow's grapple, the first being likewise...
Don't gradually decrease it, just tank it. It's because the decrease in sensitivity doesn't change the sensitivity, it just makes it like it actually grapples onto what you're aiming for. Just tank it, man. Tank it down now. Do it right now. Literally, chat right now. Log into your Overwatch and make sure that it's at least 50 or lower right now. I'm gonna sit here and wait. No, I'm not gonna sit here and wait, but seriously.
McCree roll and to use it defensively to escape danger. To build on this further, you ideally want to grapple across parallel high grounds, especially against solo divers. For instance, on Dorado 2nd, you can grapple across to the high ground coast side, and on Anubis 1st, you can replicate the same sort of effect. Keep in mind that this is significantly less effective against a coordinated dive, since a hero like Echo can pursue your escape, but by extending your survival, you can draw out more resources. However, Widow's grapple should also obviously be used to take high ground angles where possible, but the timing of this needs to be when your tanks are baiting attention, as if you grapple to a location too early, not only will your angle be contested, but you may potentially lose your life. A visual example of using grapple too early could be on Havana 1st attack, where you grapple in relation to your tanks that are practically AFK. This means your angle could potentially be forced out, and due to your reduced HP, you might die before your tanks even do anything. The last niche use of grapple is for the grapple hook shots. This isn't very practical, but as long as you know where the Widowmaker is, you can often bypass Infrasight, as it's significantly harder hitting a Widowmaker mid-air, giving you the slight advantage. Widow's second ability...
Okay, the way grapple is used is it's the element of surprise. You know where she is, she doesn't know where you are, so you grapple up, pre-aim with your crosshair where she is, and meanwhile she has to hit, because you're thinking, oh, it's harder to hit a moving target. Well, yes, but it's also harder for you to hit a target while you're moving. You kind of see what I'm saying? So the grapple isn't there to make her shot harder because you're moving, because it's an equal disadvantage. You're moving and she's moving, and she's moving on your screen. You kind of see what I'm saying? So it's not like, oh, it's so much easier to land shots when I'm grappling, like bull crap, right? What the grapple does is it allows you to go to put yourself in a location that forces the enemy Widow to flick her crosshair over where you're already pre-aimed. Hard to hit though? Yeah, they are. They're hard to hit for the person grappling as well though. You look lovely today? Yeah. Thanks. So you grapple, knowing where they are ahead of time, pre-aim your crosshair, and they have to like flick. And that's the disadvantage. PC versus console moment? I don't think it matters that much. If anything, it's even a bigger advantage in console. So I'm not gonna be able to like actually like move much because I don't have any mouse pad, but I'll still demonstrate. And I know you know this, Midget, but I'm not talking to you. So, enemy Widow here, right? Can I even grapple shot this? I don't think I can grapple shot this. Let's do this here. Okay, enemy Widow here. Okay. Oh, I'm in high latency server or something. Okay, enemy Widow here. Over and over again. Okay, I don't want to peek this. So what do? I pre-scope here. Oh no, I didn't get the kill. I'm gonna go for a grapple. See that? And my crosshair is there all the way. Meanwhile, this Widow, this is what this Widow sees. This is what this Widow sees. Come on, peek me again, I dare you. Wait, what the heck? Like right there. And you see that time of where she has to react and move her crosshair up to here. That's the advantage that I get. Meanwhile, what I'm doing is as I'm grappling, I already have my crosshair lined up where she is. Right? I mean, that wasn't even very good, but you can have it pre-aimed as you're grappling up, and you know exactly where she is. So the only time you should go for a grapple shot is when you know where the enemy Widow is, and that's it. You kind of see what I'm saying? Where you know where the enemy Widow is. Whoops. Just like that. What you don't do, what I see happen to the Widows sometimes is they'll do this like in Junkertown first attack. They'll just go for a grapple shot from spawn, right? Hey, I don't know where anybody is. Oh, right? You'd never, ever, ever do that. You never grapple if you don't know where the enemy team is. Or the enemy Widow. Because it's just, you're literally just throwing yourself in the air and saying, I'm over here, hello everybody! Right? And even if you don't get shot by some miracle, you're still going to give away your positioning, which is the entire advantage that we're talking about in the duel. So grapple is simultaneously underutilized by Widowmakers and overutilized by Widowmakers. You kind of see what I'm saying? It's like they don't think about it in the right way. So when they do it, they're probably feeding. And then they don't do it because they think they're feeding, but they're not feeding. They could actually be doing something with it. It's kind of hard to explain if you know what I mean.
Let's see, completely useless. Makes Widow shoot a Venom.
You know what this is? This is a trash can.
Avril, thanks for my host, dude. Thank you so much, brother. Appreciate it. We're actually doing a little bit of like educational content. We're looking over some videos, and then we actually have an interview with Faustus, the ex-Overwatch League coach, coming up in a little bit. Thank you so much for the host. So if you guys I don't know, Avril, if you even remember, but we hung out in the backstage of the Sydney land in season 1, 2019. You and Pixie were great. So thank you so much for the host. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's just education. That was my title. Yeah, good to see you, brother. Been a long time. Hope you're doing well. All right.
Mine onto nearly any surface, dealing 15 DPS for.
So basically, what we're doing right now is called Hammertime. It's essentially people will submit educational content to me. Say, is this video crap or not? Is this good? Is this like accurate or not? And then we go over it and we give it a different grading system. This is one that was actually submitted by a viewer of mine, Major Midget. He does a lot of these like really cool hero guides, and we're talking about Widowmaker. So we just talked about like grapple hook and how it can kind of be used to give yourself a dual advantage. So you don't just grapple up just for kicks, like go for these grapple shots just for kicks. What you're doing is like, everybody knows you don't repeak over and over again, because the enemy Widow can just place her crosshair in a spot and wait for you to peek, right? That's the peeker's advantage, right? So what you have to do is you have to use the element of surprise. You reposition yourself where, okay, I know where that Widow is, so I'm going to sneak around behind this wall and peek her this way. So she's pre-aimed on this spot, and all of a sudden she goes like, what? Oops, and she's dead, right? What you could do with grapple is you can grapple, and the Widow is forced on this little location, and then all of a sudden you're grappling up here, and she's like, what? And she has to flick her crosshair up. Meanwhile, as you're grappling, you're already pre-aimed on where she is. The grapple isn't there to make the shot easier or harder. It's harder. It's hard for both of you guys because you're either moving yourself or you're moving on her screen. It's the fact that you can pre-aim your crosshair, and she can't because she's expecting you to be here and then has to do a big flick. And remember, chat, the bigger the flick, the harder the shot. That's the idea. Okay, so here we go.
Of 75 damage paired with a 15-second cooldown, slight advantage. Widow's second ability, completely useless.
There's some kids playing outside, man. They're like screaming like little girls. It's crazy.
DPS for a total of 75 damage, paired with a 15-second cooldown and a visual indicator of it being triggered or destroyed. Widow can also see through walls on a target for the 5-second duration that the Venomine has. The predominant use of Venomine is to use it defensively, almost like an alarm bell, to alert yourself of potential flankers. Building off that fundamental concept, you may also want to tailor your Venomine based on their flankers. For instance, on Anubis defense first, you might want to Venomine top right if they're running Genji Echo or heroes with vertical mobility. However, if they're running Tracer Doomfist or heroes with limited vertical mobility, you might want to Venomine to the adjacent high ground. If it's a mixture of both, for instance Tracer Echo, then you should Venomine the flank that you are closest to, which would be the right flank in this case, as you have less time to land damage and prevent their engage. You also might
so in other words, he's saying if you're split and you're like, I don't know which flank to go because they got multiple flankers, prioritize the flank that is closest to you, because this is the one that gives you the least time to react. In other words, if this Genji gets by for free and you don't know, he's going to one-shot you. Whereas if you don't know about the Doomfist Tracer, you'll have at least a little bit of time, hopefully, to react to this in time. Trying to think if there's anything else. Well, we're not done with this section yet, so I'll let it play.
Which would be the right flank in this case, as you have less time to land damage and prevent their engage. You also might not want to use Venomine, as it can give away your unscouted position, as Spilo explains here.
Hey, it's me.
I've always been a proponent of Venomine. use it, don't waste it. It's an ability, it gives you information, it's scouting, there's no reason not to. But there are very specific circumstances when you do not want to, and I think this is one of those very specific circumstances. They know you're close, right? It's the audio cue. When you Venomine close to the enemy team, this Genji is going to hear this Venomine, and all that does is gives him opportunity to react. Now what you should do is you should peek this here, take a shot or two, and then Venomine. And that way, if the Genji does that, it's not as if you've lost the element of surprise, but now you've already given away your position, and so you have nothing to lose, and all you're doing now is you're basically defensively discouraging them from pushing you.
The last and admittedly niche use of Venomine is to utilize a hitbox to cover your head in Widow duels. The famous spot for doing this is in Hammertime first point defense, where you Venomine in a gap
this tip is so washed.
Again referring to the concept of taking advantageous duels. Widow's ultimate, wall hacks, makes Widowmaker gain wall hacks for 15 seconds. The predominant use of Infrasight is to gain additional scouting information to allow yourself to force more aggressive duels. In order to pull this off successfully, timing your Infrasight for when you're about to peak is key to gain more effective use of Infrasight, as I explain here.
Like, it seems like has
it's that, and I guess you're gonna talk more about it, but it's also it can scuff up dive staging as well.
Now is when you want the Infrasight. You've already used half of it when you're peaking. What value out of Infrasight did you get from going here to here? Nothing. Zero value. You wasted half your Infrasights. And like right now, this would be a great use of Infrasight. Perhaps, Hands of Flicks are really hard flank and then goes down main. That extra Infrasight time is going to buy you a lot of information and scouting for where the enemy is going to be pushing. Also when as well, because again, you use it way too early.
A lot of Widowmakers also like using Infrasight to match the opposing Widowmaker, but hot take, saving Infrasight all game to use it in response to their Widow's Infrasight can be wasted value, as Stocks explains here.
Do you see how you charge your ultimate faster than the enemy Widowmaker? So if you ult here, then she can't counter ult. And you can keep charging your ultimate. So by the time she gets her ultimate, your next ultimate is maybe already at 50%. So throughout this game, because you're better than the enemy Widowmaker, you can use like 10 ultimates, but she only gets to use 5 ultimates. And if she's stupid, she's going to peek you while you have your ultimate, and then you can kill her. Which means that she's going to get her ultimate even slower. And now the enemy Widowmaker is ahead of you in ult charge, even though you charged your first ultimate faster, but you just held onto it forever.
I mean, but here's the thing. I can understand. So this is something this is not new strategy at all. This is pretty old and tired. This was first discussed in, I think, Overwatch League Season 1, about if you have a defender's advantage, sometimes it is okay to save your ultimate to mirror the enemy Widow, because the way you think about it is if we have a positional advantage, if we're on defense and we have the high grounds and the flanks and we got everything that we want, the only way that we lose it is if something goes wrong. And one of those things that can go wrong is the enemy Widow can pop Infrasights and get a pick. So what we could do is we can say, okay, yeah, I'm charging my Infrasight a little faster than you, but if I wait another 20 seconds, I can completely deny your popping Infrasight as a win condition for a fight. Now, I don't necessarily say that that's always good. I agree with Stocks here and the fact that you can be building them faster, but that is something that we have to kind of respect in this discussion.
Like the only time you really consistently match Widowmaker ultimates is if you 100% know that you're evenly matched. So if you're in like a tournament game and you know that the enemy Widowmaker is good and you respect her, then you can match ultimates because it's just the safer play. But in solo queue, if you want to climb like against a master level Widowmaker, you can't give her that respect.
A common response to not matching sites would be what to do when they have sites and you don't. Well, there is one primary option, which is to play angles that avoid the Widowmaker completely. A visual example of this could be on Havana first point defense, where you simply play in a position where their Widowmaker does not have LOS onto you. If possible, you should constantly be asking your teammates to where their Widowmaker is, so she doesn't get the jump on you. Note that you also have a long sight line, cover, and a route of retreat as well. Onto the compositional.
So again, when they have Infrasight and you try and not AFK entirely, but you also have to, you cannot peek. Well, here's the other thing too. So one thing that you could have touched on here, and this is super nitpicky, but I want to talk about it, is that if the enemy Widow has Infrasight, it's not just the enemy Widow that becomes more dangerous. It's the entire enemy team. If the enemy team has a tracer, she knows exactly where you are. She can place her crosshair or flank perfectly in a location where you have no idea she's going to come. Really, the entire enemy team has the entire informational advantage, so they could do a lot of more aggressive stuff than you. So it's not just the Widow that you're scared of, it's the entire enemy team. So you have to be really careful. Like, Infrasight is one of those ultimates where 9 times out of 10, unless it's popped mid-fight, you really just have to wait it out. You have to hope that she's mistimed it and or just give up space, because it's rough to play into. So yeah, okay.
Have LOS onto you. You also have a long sight line, cover,
of course, he has to nitpick. I mean, that's my job.
Positional, communicational, and positional part of the guide. In terms of general positioning, there are 4 key principles which I'll showcase on Hanamura's second attack. The first is to have cover, pretty obvious. The second is to have line of sight, which is again pretty obvious. The third is to have good distance from angles so that the enemy flankers don't sneak up on you. And the fourth and final guideline is to have aggressive and defensive rotations to exert more pressure on the enemy team or to just escape. With positioning in Brawl, where there often isn't much mobility or range, taking slightly more aggressive splits timed well during the team fight is key. For example, on Legion Control Center, a very brawl-based map, you could path co-side and set up a great angle whilst your tanks pay attention. Note that the 4 guidelines also apply here. In Dive,
okay, so in Brawl, and I think in Dive as well, do you guys remember when we talked about Sombra timing? Okay, and a little bit with Tracer timing as well. What's the key thing with Sombra and Tracer timing outside of going with your team, right? Put pressure at the same time as your team. Is that exactly accurate? Think about it. Sombra and Tracer timing. When do you start to apply pressure from a flank with Sombra and Tracer? When team engages. Yes, sort of. Yes. I mean, that's the big one. Right. Just after. And I think that's actually a really important concept to understand. Because you're playing the squishier heroes, but also the heroes that have the most potential to have impact. For example, you're playing Winston, Diva, Sombra, Tracer, Dive. Your Winston is tankier, he has better HP, and he has less pop-off potential. Right? He just, like, for example, like, if you leave a Winston uncontested, he's got a weaker gun, he's got weaker punch you in the mouth power, right? So you would rather have your Winston Diva take the initial bit of threat and you come in just a little bit afterwards. Just a little bit afterwards. So here's my thing, is the timing needs to be with your tanks, but I would say half a second after your tanks. If I'm playing Tracer and Dive and I'm trying to one-clip that Zen, I'm not going to go in with my Winston, or I'm going to go in right as my Winston's landing, half a second, and then now I'm going, because now that Zenyatta is fully focused on annihilating and beating up that Winston. He's not thinking about anything else, right? There's not simultaneous pressure. It's a big, like, for example, I'm trying to think what's a good analogy here. It'd be like sneaking up on somebody, right? To like, okay, you're a pickpocket, right? Can you imagine how effective a pickpocket would be at like a fireworks show? There's a big firework, boom, right? And that's when you reach in. They're not thinking at all what's going on behind them, right? That's a terrible analogy, but you get the idea, okay? So in the cases of Sombra and Tracer, if you wait just a little after the big ugly tanks do something really visually or threatening or baiting, and then you go in, you're going to find way more hacks, way more picks, way more pressure. And remember, the Tracer and the Sombra are the ones that are going to be able to do that. Now, I want you to take that logic, okay, and apply that to Widowmaker. Listen to what Midget says here and think.
Timed well during the team fight is key. For example, on Legion Control Center, a very brawl-based map, you could path co-side and set up a great angle whilst your tanks pay attention. Note that the 4 guidelines also apply here. In Dive...
Right, so let's look at this here. So what I would say is that, yes, your core pushes in, you apply the pressure from the flank. If you're gonna play Widow and Legion Control Center, this is probably how you're gonna position. But what you would not want to do, especially like, let's say on retakes, okay, like let's say you're trying to retake, you would not peek here as your tanks are pushing. You would maybe even let your tanks go in a little bit, like a quarter of a second, because remember, you have a hero with immense pop-off potential, immense kill potential, and you're like Sombra and Tracer, you're very squishy. Because if the enemy sees you, like right as your tanks are pushing and puts a couple of shots your way, and like say chunks you down, you're gonna have to stop, you're gonna have to grab a mega health back, you might, like, you kind of see what I'm saying? So I think the squishier the hero and the more valuable the hero, the more you want them to follow up. And you know this is true because in all of the Widowmaker pop-off clips that you've probably ever seen, when is Widowmaker popping off? Is it early in the fight? Usually not. It's usually mid to late fight when Widowmakers start getting these 3Ks, these 4Ks, and these things like that, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to if you're going to min-max the pressure that you put out and the kill pressure that you have, you are the immediate follow-up. You're not leading the charge. And you're not even doing it at the same time as your team, I don't think. I'd say immediately just peek afterwards. So, and you could use this against any composition, not just Brawl. You know, your Rissa plants her shield, she throws a halt out, 3, 2, 1, peek, right? And there's your value.
path coast-side and set up a great angle whilst your tanks pay attention. Note that the 4 guidelines also apply here.
Is this the first time you talked about this quarter half second rule? First time with Widowmaker, yeah, actually. I've talked about it with Sombra. I've talked about it with Tracer. It's something that I've been thinking about more recently because I have these concepts in my head that I think about and I see, but then I don't like really flesh them out. And then I kind of like talk about them more. But yeah.
In Dive, likewise to McCree, you don't want to stack onto your backline, but you also don't want to play split, as Spilo explains here.
You don't want to position on top of the team because it allows the enemy team to be able to dive you without taking damage because there's only one LOS where you're actually putting damage. Like we could draw a straight line of where this damage is coming from, and it's here. They can hide from this damage in here, they can hide from the damage here, they can hide from the damage here, they can hide from the damage here. Whereas if you position just slightly here, not too much, where you can still be Harmony Orbed, Armor Pack, you can poke this pre-jump, this pre-jump, this pre-jump.
Oh wait, we have salute. I forgot to salute. Oh my
this
God,
no longer
my
has
bad.
cover. This has significantly less cover. This has significantly less cover. And you can even peek down this hallway a little bit easier. Dive wants to corral you. Stacking against Dive is not the answer. It is being in positions where you can peel for each other, but you can poke out Dive before the fight happens. So you don't want to be isolated, but you don't want to be
Shut
stacked.
up, dude.
In terms of setting up
Okay,
your
thank
own
you.
dives, you want to make sure you have longer sight lines on where your team is diving, i.e. the kill box, an angle on said kill box, and LOS to your backline. For instance, on Anuba's second point defense, you have a sight line,
I want to talk more about the timing thing in a second because I'm getting distracted. I'm thinking about
angle,
it.
and line of sight respectively on the kill box. You can also be calling out potential dive targets if you soften them up with a body shot, as Jane explains here.
Widowmaker actually requires a surprising amount of comms.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Especially when you're playing with Dive, so that people can follow up on your directs, much in the same way that if you direct somebody on Pharah, that alone can trigger a dive. If the tank used too many resources or managed to land a direct on a squishy, the Pharah would call a dive and we'd just collapse on them. So that was like one of our primary strategies. Now this was
Not with Widow. Not with Widow.
seasons and seasons ago.
Okay, this doesn't apply. I'm gonna let him talk, but this is very outdated.
Resources or managed to land a direct on a squishy, the Pharah would call a dive and we'd just collapse on them. So that was like one of our primary strategies. Now this was seasons and seasons ago. This current strat doesn't work as well. But yeah, with Pharah and Widowmaker, having the ability to like have a team or something that can follow up on directs very quickly is an extremely powerful tool.
In poke, long
This actually has a lot to do with what we just talked about with timing. Why is that concept outdated? Now, I want to be very clear. Jane, and I was talking about this with Connor the other day. Jane was like a groundbreaking educational content creator, in my opinion. He was very personable, he was intelligent, and he got a lot of the ball rolling. And so any critique I have of things that he's saying, especially stuff that he said years ago, is not like I'm grateful for what he's done. But what's the problem with that? I think that's a potential maybe I land a body shot or and we can follow up of that for sure. But to me, it needs to be the other way around. It should be my tanks are doing something and then I'm following up off of what they do, right? Because remember the whole timing thing, right? And that's more consistent because then your tanks aren't like, okay, can we dive, Widow? Are you hitting a body shot? And your Widow's like, well, yeah, but there's a shield in the way. Well, what's going to cause the shield to drop? You actually diving, because it's going to cause enough chaos where you can actually hit the shots that you're trying to hit in the first place. Now, he brings up, right, he needs the space to shoot as well. Exactly. Now, he brings up an interesting example, and I want to, before we keep going about this, I'm sorry, we're getting off on like so many different tangents here, but I think it's fun. Okay, Pharah versus Widow, okay? Now, I want you guys to think about this. Does Pharah hold to the same standards that we're putting on Sombra, Tracer, and Widow in terms of actual timing pressure? Think about that. Why not? Why not? Hey, kitty. Right, so Pharah is usually a hero that's getting a pocket anyway, and so she can play more aggressive. Like, I'm not saying every DPS hero in the history of the game should always follow up tank pressure and not synchronize with tank pressure. Pharah is definitely one of the heroes that can play a little more aggressive. She's got a mercy pocket. She's a little tankier. She'll be okay, right? So she can start softening them up ahead of time, and she's not going to get like poked out too much. Now, timing is still important with Pharah, but it's not like, oh, I have to synchronize perfectly, or I'm gonna get my translocator force, or I'm gonna get my grapple force, and I'm gone, right? She's just I shot the Pharah, okay, and she's still there, right? She's just gonna be a little behind cover. So far, absolutely can be spamming, big direct and call it direct and you dive. Now, I still think that that's a little outdated. Your Pharah is not going to be calling the timing of the dives usually, almost ever, but your Pharah can be spamming ahead of time to allow the dive when it does happen to open up. This is actually very important on Lijiang Tower night market. You guys remember the Lijiang Tower night market where the point's a square, right? The Pharah repositions, and like let's say you're playing into like a brawl, you actually cannot dive onto the point until your pharmacy plus maybe your Zen spamming from a long sightline soften up the brawl, maybe force BAP shift, Lucio amp, break shields a little bit, maybe break some Symmetra turrets, right? You need to soften up the Symmetra brawl on point before you guys actually dive. Because if you just dove in immediately, yeah, your Pharah would have a lot of space, but your tanks would almost instantly die. Whereas a Widow in that situation, I mean, Widow would be terrible there, but like a Widow wouldn't be able to do any softening up almost at all. You know what I'm saying? Pre-dive. Like that's not a thing. Okay, but we'll keep going.
Longer lines and harder, more aggressive angles are the two keys to beating a double shield composition. With the former,
yes,
in Blizzard World first attack, you could grapple to the right side high ground whilst the front line is baiting attention, providing you with an angle and a decently ranged sight line onto the Ashe. Since
careful of tracer variation. Attaboy Midget, nice job.
double shield doesn't have much mobility, you can also be looking for harder flanks.
Because they don't have much mobility, you can be looking for harder flanks.
Referring back to the Hanamura second point example, and a 90-degree off angle, hence you aren't just shooting shields. However, in double shield variations that play a tracer who can mark your flank, you should be timing your splits late if you are keen on going for these aggressive plays. Well, that's it for the guide.
Nice! Beefed! Good guide. I liked it. Nice job. Nice job. Nice job. Yeah, I liked it. I think it brought up some interesting discussion. No errors. Definitely highlighted the stuff I'd want to talk about. Good work. Really, really good job. It didn't go off. I know. I can't get it to go off anymore. I have to figure out how to. Okay, fine. We'll do the beef thing. Here you go. Wait, it's not. Dang it. Hang on. Okay, now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it was beef time. There you go. Sorry. I can't get it. The hotkey thing doesn't work anymore.